Hello again. This is my second Dodge the Diabetes Bullet YouTube episode. In my first episode, I mentioned that I would give my dear viewers links to the preeminent doctors and scientists that had provided books and YouTube podcasts and the like with information that had helped me a lot. These people have been extremely helpful with the information they provided, and I wanted to make sure to provide that information to you. Now, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not being paid to provide these links. No one is sponsoring me for providing these links. In fact, these people have no idea who I am. But this information that they provided was incredibly helpful to me. And I want to make sure that you have this information, that it's accessible to you. It can keep a person really busy to try to read through all of their information. So my goal is to make a very short path for you folks to understand what they have provided, and then make sure that you have that information accessible because you're sure to have questions. So let me begin. The very first link that I provide, and these links are all provided down below the YouTube channel episode. The first one is for Jessie Inchauspé. Now, she's a French biochemist. She's dedicated her life to figuring out how to keep blood glucose from spiking. And she's also known as the glucose goddess. And her book, The Glucose Revolution, was the first book that I bought. And her information was incredibly good, incredibly helpful. Unfortunately, at the time, at the position I was in my insulin resistance and all of the other issues that I had, her hacks, she calls them hacks. I tried every one of them. They're all good, and I use them now. But at that time, by themselves, they were not enough to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. But I give that link to you because her information is good, and the points are incredibly helpful, and I am using most of them now. So the second link that I'm providing is for Dr. Stephen Gundry. Dr. Gundry was a renowned thoracic surgeon. He gave up his practice to devote himself full time to trying to make people healthy so that they wouldn't need his surgery techniques. What he was finding was that people that would come to him for surgery, he would perform the surgery and be successful, and then put them on a diet so that they wouldn't need to come back for more surgery. And he decided, why am I doing that? Why don't I just make them healthy to begin with so they don't need my surgery? And so that's what he did. He threw his practice to the wind, and he devoted himself to researching all of the things that are needed to try to get people healthy so they don't need cardiovascular thoracic surgery. So I'm providing that link to you. Now, when I started with his books, the first book I bought was Unlocking the Keto Code, which was his most recent at that time book. And again, he has incredible information in his books. And that particular book has a lot of very important information in it. But unfortunately, again, at the point that I was in my experience and my problems and issues, his tips in that book were not enough to make big changes in my life. So I kept searching. I knew I could tell his information was really good. So I looked back at his first book. His first book was called Diet Evolution. And in that book, there was something called the teardown menu. I believe it's chapter 5 in that book. It was incredibly helpful. That was really the turning point for me. Now, it didn't accomplish everything, but it helped me so much. And it really helped me overcome, at least an initial stage of my issues. My weight did improve somewhat. My factors like cholesterol and triglycerides did improve somewhat, but in the end, it wasn't enough, and I had to go further. Now, another one of his books that I found incredible, in fact, I guess I must be some sort of crazy geek, but it's his gut check book. He talks about the gut microbiome, I just found the information absolutely jaw-dropping. The information that they've discovered in the last decade or so is just mind-boggling about the gut microbiome. So I highly recommend those books. But again, the gut microbiome, it did help me a lot because I had some other issues with digestive issues. But his Diet Evolution book, the first book, really got me started. And then Gut Check kind of explained why some of what I was doing with Diet Evolution was working so well. So the next author that I want to give you a link to is Dr. Valter Longo. Now he's a Ph.D. He's a research scientist at Keck USC, and he's devoted his life to researching the effects of fasting. And his book, The Longevity Diet, it talks a lot about fasting, but he also has something called the fasting mimicking diet. In other words, a way of eating, but your body doesn't know you're not fasting. He gives you just enough nutrients. You get green leafy vegetables and very healthy fats, and your body thinks you're fasting. And so you get the benefits of fasting, which are absolutely amazing. And we'll talk about those things in other episodes, but I wanted to make sure to give you that link. And I found the information from Dr. Valter Longo incredibly important. And I found out about him actually from a podcast that was done by Dr. Gundry. So that was a very important introduction for me, and that book meant a lot. But even after reading Dr. Gundry and Dr. Longo and also Jesse Inchauspé, I was still missing something big. And I was trying so hard to put the pieces together. And then one of my doctors, an integrative medicine doctor, gave me a reference to a Dr. Jason Fung. And he wrote the book called The Obesity Code. He's written other books since then, but that was the book that I bought. And that was the book that really filled in some of the empty spaces in my knowledge. And he talks about how, really in a nutshell, everything boils down to your fasting insulin levels. So I'm giving you the link to Dr. Jason Fung, and then we're going to talk more about him even in this episode, but I'll be talking a lot about him over time. All of these people were incredibly important in my understanding of what I needed to do to get my weight down, to dodge the diabetes bullet, and to get all of my health factors back in order. So as I mentioned, reading all of these books and listening to all the podcasts can really keep a person busy. At least by giving you all of them, you'll have access to the information that I had access to and was able to make sense of. But I'd hope that my episodes, if you'll watch them and stick with me on this journey, will kind of give you a much shorter path to your being able to dodge the diabetes bullet, reduce your weight, and improve all of your blood labs, your triglycerides, your cholesterol, your liver enzymes, your A1C, all of those things. So some of you may be watching these episodes mainly concerned with weight loss. Others of you may be mainly concerned with improving your lab work. And others may want both. I needed both. And not only that, but I also had these weird digestive problems. So I'm going to try to make sure to give you information that addresses all of those things. And that's my goal for all of my episodes. So now that I've given you those links, I wanted to give you just a few major points that were hugely helpful to me to get started. The first one is a foundational point, and all of those authors that I gave you links to agreed on these. And that point is get rid of the processed food from your eating. No processed food. I got rid of everything. I got rid of my boxed cereals, my cookies, my pastries, my candies. I got rid of everything that was processed food. The chips, the dips, everything. That's a big, big deal because processed foods contribute immensely to obesity and to the bad lab work. So the next thing I want to mention that I did is a really big point some of you may really wonder whether I lost my mind, but the point is, and I'll give you links to specific discussions by these preeminent scientists and doctors about this particular point, but it's to give up fruit and fruit juices. And that's what I did. I cut out fruit. I cut out fruit juices. Because why? You must be thinking, oh my God, that's crazy. Fruit is so healthy for us. Well, we'll talk about that. But you know what fruit has? The sugar fructose. Fructose is different than glucose. You may have heard the term, maybe from a doctor, sugar is sugar, right? You've probably heard that. I certainly heard it. That's not quite the whole story. Fructose is processed by your liver. Glucose can be used by all the cells in your body, but fructose is only processed by your liver, and that's where it is turned into fat. And so fructose is what raises triglycerides, cholesterol. It contributes to obesity, and it's turned into fat. So I gave up fruit. I gave up fruit juices. Now, the one thing that these doctors sort of differ in is Dr. Gundry is a little bit more moderate. He talks about it being okay, just fine to have a little piece of fruit now and then. He says you should have in-season fruit. You can't overeat it. It is nature's candy, but once in a while is good. But other doctors like Dr. Fung emphasize that the fructose, the fruit, is really, really rough on the whole weight gain problem and the insulin resistance problem. And it's actually pretty complicated because I tried to research it more than what I read in these books. And I'm not going to talk about that more right now, but for now, I just want to make the point that I gave up fruit. I gave up fruit juice, which is even worse than fruit because you don't get the fiber of fruit. And my triglycerides, my cholesterol, my A1C, everything got better. My weight started dropping more. It was a huge, huge point for me to follow. So I wanted to make sure to relay that one to you. So a couple more things on the topic of fruit and eliminating fruit. For one thing, if you watched my first episode, you saw that fruit was front and center in that celebration of the winter solstice. And yes, it was. And we'll get back to that. And hopefully at some point we'll reintroduce fruit into our diet, but we'll control it. But if you want to lose weight, which is what I wanted to do, and if you want to get your blood work in line, which was what I wanted to do, I cut the fruit out. It's a temporary thing, hopefully. You'll get a little bit back. But I have a couple of things that I wanted to mention. If you don't believe this, think of a grizzly bear. When a grizzly bear wants to get ready for a full winter of hibernation, what do? They guzzle salmon, freshly caught salmon, and berries. Berries. That is a very, very powerful weight gain combination of protein and berries. So we'll talk about the protein a little later, but just keep in mind that they eat berries. So the other thing is I wanted to mention is it's sort of a challenge. Some people say, oh, there's so much nutrition in fruit. And there is, but there's also fructose. So what the challenge is I want you to think of a nutrient that you feel like you're getting from fruit. And then I want you to search online, Google it if you will, that nutrient and ask, is there a vegetable that provides that nutrient? And chances are you'll be hard put to find a nutrient that you're getting from fruit that you're not also able to get from vegetables. And vegetables have the nutrients, but not the fructose. It's a big deal. So that's a challenge. There are going to be some exceptions, and those exceptions will be like for the antioxidants that are provided by some of the berries. And there are some other exceptions, but by and large, the nutrients that you get in fruit can also be gotten in vegetables and without the fructose. So still on the topic of eliminating fruit, I provide a couple of additional links, one to Dr. Gundry and one to Dr. Fung, about eliminating fruit and fruit juices from the diet. And you're welcome to check those out and see if they answer your questions. So the next point, the third point that I found incredibly important, and this is the thing that Dr. Jason Fung really filled in the missing pieces for me, and that is that almost everything we eat triggers an insulin response by our bodies. So insulin is a hormone, and it does a couple of things, but a big thing that it does is when there's insulin in your blood, it tells your body, store the fat. Don't release the fat. If you're trying to lose weight, that's not a good thing. So when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, what do I do? Dr. Fung explains the only things that really don't trigger an insulin response are leafy green vegetables and healthy oils. Think olive oil, avocado oil. So he says even protein, remember the grizzly bear and their salmon, protein triggers an insulin response. Even artificial sweeteners and zero-calorie natural sweeteners like stevia trigger an insulin response. Now there's varying levels of that, but if you're struggling like I was struggling with insulin resistance, any kind of insulin response was not a welcome thing. So that was a big, big point for me to understand and a big point for me to turn into something that I could follow. So I've provided yet another link to a discussion by Dr. Jason Fung about the topic of foods that we eat triggering insulin responses. Now, after all that information, you're probably wondering, well, okay, what can I eat? So this is what I did. Remember that I talked about Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution book and the teardown menu? I basically followed that, but I was a little bit more restrictive than what Dr. Gundry says. And after I read Dr. Fung, and also Dr. Longo, I became even a little bit more restrictive. So this is what I did. I ate lots and lots and lots of the leafy green vegetables and bitter vegetables. Think, yes, lettuce, but more like dark green vegetables. I feel like I'm getting more nutrients from them, like arugula and kale and radicchio and all of those types of vegetables. And I also ate lots and lots of cruciferous vegetables. And Dr. Gundry talks a lot about cruciferous vegetables, but cauliflower, which is actually a favorite of mine, both raw and cooked, and broccoli and Brussels sprouts and bok choy and napa cabbage, and there's a lot of cruciferous vegetables, shredded cabbage. I eat huge bowls of shredded cabbage, and I use if I'm eating them raw, I use a salad dressing of olive oil, and that should be organic, extra virgin, first cold pressed olive oil. And I prefer balsamic vinegar. Now, Dr. Gundry and also Jesse Inchauspé talk about apple cider vinegar. Yes, there really is a big benefit to that if you do it right. But I like balsamic vinegar because of the flavor. But you can use olive oil with balsamic or olive oil with apple cider vinegar or olive oil with lemon juice. Those are all good. And they make a nice dressing. It's very good. And the olive oil is really good for you. So in addition to salads, you can get pretty tired of eating raw food all the time. I like to eat those same things cooked. And in order to cook them, you could steam them if you want, but you don't need to eliminate oil. Remember, healthy oils like olive oil are really, really good for us. And so what I do is I usually saute these vegetables. So think of like Brussels sprouts or bok choy. I cut them in half. I saute them in a very high quality olive oil, again, organic, extra virgin, first cold pressed, and I saute them at a relatively low temperature, like a, say, medium low, because you don't want to raise olive oil to a high temperature, then it can have issues. But at a relatively low, non-smoking point, you can saute vegetables until they caramelize. And then once the bigger vegetable is caramelized, I put in crushed garlic. I like a lot of crushed garlic. I'll do this for you sometime. I think we'll have fun cooking together. But I put in a lot of crushed garlic and saute that a little bit. And then I add maybe a tablespoon or two of Worcestershire sauce because it has a really great flavor with these vegetables. And depending on what I'm doing, I might even add a little bit of cheese, like grated blue cheese, the aged cheeses like Parmesan cheese and blue cheese. Dr. Gundry talks quite a bit about how they can also be very beneficial to us. And again, depending on whether I'm trying to get any protein, I might throw in some blanched slivered almonds or maybe some squash seeds or other kind of seeds. So that can make a pretty nutritious meal. We'll do a meal like that. I'll cook it for you and you'll see. And it really comes out very good. So that's how I cook those vegetables. So in addition to those different types of vegetables and eating them both raw and eating them cooked and maybe throwing in a few nuts here and there and a little bit of cheese here and there, I drank lots and lots of water. Now my personal preference are the sparkling waters like Pellegrino, Saratoga, Gerald Steiner, Perrier. There's a lot of them. I like the natural spring sparkling waters is my preference. And a lot of times I'll have that just plain or I'll have it with a squeeze of lemon. But somehow the bubbles make me feel good. I like the bubbles and I feel like they make me feel more satisfied. And it's not that you don't get a little bit hungry eating like this because you're gonna, especially in the beginning, you might miss some of those uh, snacks that you used to have, like the chips and dip and stuff like that. But actually, your cravings go away fairly quickly. And I felt very satisfied with these foods, and I eat a lot, especially vegetables. You can eat a lot. It's not a calorie in, calorie out kind of thing, but you can eat a lot of vegetables and still lose a tremendous amount of weight. And what happened was if I found myself losing too much weight too quickly, and yes, that actually can happen on eating something like this where you're eating mainly vegetables and some healthy fats, I would just add in more protein. Now, I've already mentioned things like a little bit of aged cheese, like blue cheese and Parmesan cheese, and some nuts and some seeds. I would add maybe a little bit more of that. Or I would also add in avocado. Avocado is very good for us. I like eggs, whether they're fried eggs or boiled eggs. I also like fish, but my favorite is Chilean sea bass, but a tuna salad is really good too. And some chicken, preferably pasture raised. And I try not to eat too much beef, but I do eat it every once in a while. But I kept the protein when I would add it down to a fairly low level. Um, two, uh, just 2 or 3 or 4 ounces, not usually more than 4, but more often than not, more like around 2 ounces. And keeping it low like that was very good for weight loss. But Dr. Longo mentioned that elderly people like me need to get a little bit more protein. So I would increase the protein sometimes and slow down the weight loss. So there you have it. That's what I ate to get started. I hope that gives you some information to get you started. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. I'll get the next episode ready just as quickly as possible. Until then, take care.